have a new-ish job as the Director of Cultural Arts at the Jewish Community Center of Kansas City, which is actually located in Overland Park, Kansas. The greater Kansas City area also includes parts of Kansas and parts of Missouri, so it's a little complex. But my job as the Director of Cultural Arts makes me responsible for all of the cultural arts happenings in that building. And the way a Jewish community center is structured is, I think, a really, really smart way to approach human wellness. The theme, the motto of the Jewish Community Center where I work, the JCC of Greater Kansas City, is live well, get centered. So it's about your body, but it's also about your mind and about your soul. So we have a fitness and sports area, a gym, a YMCA, for lack of a better word. But then we also have learning opportunities and enrichment opportunities. So there's a Jewish Life and Learning arm of the Jewish Community Center. There's a Heritage Center where we cater to the needs of people 65 and older. There was a raging mahjong tournament going on in the Heritage Center when I left the building this evening. We have a child development center where we have a preschool. We have a growing school of dance and performing arts. We have summer camps, we have family programming, and we have cultural arts. So what it strives to be, a Jewish community center, and most Jewish community centers are like this, is a center where you can get all of your needs met in one place. You can work out on the treadmill and then go upstairs and learn a little bit about something and then go see a show. So I've been there for 2 months, and I have been tasked with restructuring the department, for lack of a better word. What we have in the Cultural Arts Department right now is a very vibrant and thriving community theater season. What they want to do is start to bring more things into that space. We have a really fantastic space. A couple 7 years ago, a very wealthy and generous woman named Shirley White donated millions of dollars to build a fantastic theater facility. And so we have a facility out there, and mostly we have used it for our community theater season, and it is their hope that we can use it to do more things and build a performing arts series on top of that. So it is my job to line those two things up. I'm also responsible for the film festival that we have yearly. I'm responsible for the School of the Arts and book events and things of that nature. So I'm sitting now behind a desk where I'm responsible for all the budgets, and I'm responsible for all the costs incurred. And so we're doing a production of Avenue Q in our community theater. And I did write a blog about what makes Avenue Q Jewish, if you're interested in that. It was kind of a stretch. Avenue Q is it's a fun but really racy show based on Sesame Street, so it uses puppets. And it's a really complex production. So we have that going on right now. And all of the actors are volunteer, but all of the tech people behind the scenes and in the pit are paid. And so that I was trying to explain this to our CFO. He's a numbers guy. He's been at the center for years. He's been at the J for 13 years, I think. And so he's seen, how the community theater season works. And he doesn't understand why the community theater structure is such that we pay pit musicians, but we don't pay onstage talent. And so he said, I was trying to explain, and I really didn't have a good explanation. Do you? I mean, why is it structured that way? So we pay a pit, but we don't pay the actors. And he said, well, why is it an opposite? Why don't you pay the actors and not pay the pit? And I was befuddled, and I couldn't answer him. And then I had to justify the salaries of the people in that pit. And it was a very strange flip-flop of roles for me to sit in a chair and justify payment to musicians in a way that made sense to a CFO who's all about numbers. Why couldn't you get the same thing for free? Why couldn't we get interns? Why couldn't we have high school students do it? A board member said, we don't need a front of house manager. We can just have our board members do it. I'll set up volunteers and we'll have the board members do it. And so I'm here on the side of the world thinking, okay, I've got to cut costs, but I also have to retain the quality of what we're doing. And I also have to try and figure out a way to explain that artists deserve economic dignity. And so it has been an interesting week for me, and I would give you the answer, the clear-cut answer that I told to our CFO and our executive director and our board about why musicians in the pit ought to be paid. But I didn't have a clear-cut answer. And I still don't accept that we deserve to be paid. And so that made me really question myself as a advocate of the arts. If I don't have a ready answer for a CFO as to why the music director costs X amount of money for a show, then I need to get better at being an arts advocate and better at being an arts administrator. I should have an answer to that. And so the lesson I guess we learned this week is that think like an accountant so you can answer that accountant's questions. So when you are mounting a show and you're going to pay your clarinet X amount of money, think like an accountant. How do you explain to an accountant that you need that clarinet? How do you explain to an accountant that you can't just do it with a piano? You have to have a clarinet, you have to have the drums, you have to have 3 pianos, you have to have a guitar, you have to have a bass, you have to have a cello. How do you explain that to somebody who doesn't understand music? And then try to structure your arguments in a way that's going to make sense to that accountant. And if I come up with any brilliant justifications and ideas, I'll be sure to share them with you, but share them with me if you come up with them. Why do we pay pit musicians? Why don't we pay actors on the community theater stage? What's the definition of community theater is to involve the community. So why isn't it all volunteer? Why is it a structure that we don't pay the actors, but we pay the musicians and the directors and the stage managers and the light guys? Why isn't it all community? Interesting questions for a beginning of a fall rainy night. And yeah, you have any answers?